In exactly 7 days, the United States and Israel just wiped out 44 Iranian warships, destroyed every single Iranian fighter jet, and obliterated most of Iran's missile capability. 7 days. Iran's entire navy on the bottom of the ocean. Their air force, gone. Their missile manufacturing facilities, decimated. Their top leadership, eliminated. Then the second level of leadership, also gone. Now they are scrambling with a third and fourth tier of leaders that, according to the President of the United States himself, nobody even knows who they are. And right now, your newsfeed is full of noise, opinions, spin, outrage from one side, celebration from the other. But nobody is asking the questions that actually matter. What happens next? What does Congress actually have to say about this? What does it mean for you, for your gas prices, your taxes, your sons and daughters in the military, and the world your children are going to grow up in? That is what we do here. And we are about to break it all down. But before we go any deeper, I need to say something. If nobody in your life, not your family, not your friends, not your social media feed, is breaking down what is actually happening inside the halls of power in Washington right now, that is exactly why this channel exists. Senate Decoded is not left. It is not right. It is not a mouthpiece for any party or any agenda. It is a channel built for one person. Emphasize you, the everyday American who deserves to understand exactly what their government is doing and why. Hit subscribe right now. Turn on notifications. Because what is happening in the world right now is moving fast, and you cannot afford to be the last person to understand it. This is not just a channel. This is a movement of informed Americans who refuse to be kept in the dark. Now, let us decode exactly what just happened with Iran, and more importantly, what it means for America. Let us start with the facts. Just the facts. No spin, no agenda. In the span of just 1 week, United States and Israeli forces conducted a sweeping military offensive against the Islamic Republic of Iran that by any historical measure is staggering in its speed and scope. 44 Iranian naval vessels sunk, every single one. Iran's entire navy, an institution they spent decades and billions of dollars building, is now, as President Trump put it while speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One, at the bottom of the sea. Iran's Air Force, gone. Every plane. Not most planes. Not some planes. Every plane. Iran's missile capability, described by the president as mostly wiped out. Their missile manufacturing facilities struck hard. Drone capacity, according to Trump, way down. And the leadership? Multiple levels of Iranian leadership have been eliminated. Trump stated plainly, we got rid of one leadership. We got rid of the second level of leadership. Now, they're on that third or fourth level of leadership. And they have leaders right now that nobody even knows who they are. Now, let that sink in for a moment. The sitting president of the United States just confirmed that the Islamic Republic of Iran, one of the most powerful military forces in the Middle East just 2 weeks ago, is now being run by people whose names nobody knows. That is not a small development. Emphasize, that is one of the most significant geopolitical shifts in the last 40 years. Now, here is where Senate Decoded earns its name, because we do not just tell you what happened, we break down the language. We decode what was actually said and what it means in plain English. Trump used the phrase unconditional surrender when describing what he wants from Iran. Those two words carry enormous weight, and most people scrolling the headlines have no idea what they actually mean in a geopolitical and legal context. Unconditional surrender is not the same as a ceasefire. It is not the same as a peace deal. It is not the same as negotiations. Unconditional surrender means you lay down every weapon. You accept every term. You have no power to negotiate anything. The last time the United States received an unconditional surrender on this scale was from Imperial Japan in 1945. When asked what unconditional surrender means in this context, Trump defined it himself with words that were both blunt and revealing. He said, and I quote directly, "They cry uncle," or when they can't fight any longer, or there's nobody around to cry uncle to because we wiped out their leadership. Read between those lines carefully. The president is not just describing a military objective. He is describing two possible endings to this conflict. Either Iran formally surrenders, or there is no one left in their leadership to surrender at all. That is an extraordinary statement from a sitting American president. And every senator, every congressman, every foreign policy expert in Washington heard exactly what he meant. This is not just a military operation. This is a declaration about the complete dismantling of the Iranian regime as a functioning military and political entity. Here's where it gets interesting, and where the mainstream media is completely dropping the ball. Republican senators who have been briefed on the Iran operation have publicly said that the strikes have, quote, significantly degraded Iran's military capabilities. That tracks with everything the president said from Air Force One. But here's the part that is not making the front page. Those same senators are specifically emphasizing on the record that these attacks are not meant to become what they are calling forever wars. That phrase is deliberate. It is not accidental language. Those senators are drawing a very public line in the sand. They are signaling to the White House, to the American public, and to the world, we support degrading Iran. We do not support a decade-long military occupation of the Middle East. Now, why does that matter to you? Because it tells you something critical about the tension that is already developing between the executive branch and the legislative branch on this war. The president is calling this a minor excursion. His own party's senators are already making sure everyone knows they are watching the exit strategy. That gap between a president calling a war minor and senators publicly warning about forever wars is a gap you need to watch very closely. Emphasize. Because when Congress and the White House disagree about the scope of a war, American history tells us that gap tends to grow, not shrink. The nuclear question, nobody wants to answer. Now we need to talk about the single most dangerous and most ignored question in this entire situation, the enriched uranium. Iran has been enriching uranium for decades. They have been working slowly, secretly, and persistently toward nuclear capability. Joint U.S. and Israeli forces have targeted Iranian nuclear sites in this offensive. Trump himself described the strikes as a total obliteration of those sites. But here is the critical question that a reporter asked Trump directly aboard Air Force One. And the answer he gave is something every American needs to hear. Are ground troops going to be sent in to secure the enriched uranium at those nuclear sites? Trump's answer, again in his own words, was this. They haven't been able to get to it, and at some point, maybe we will be. It would be a great thing, but right now, we're just decimating them. We haven't gone after it, but it's something we could do later. Let me decode that for you. The President of the United States just confirmed, on record, that there is enriched uranium at Iranian nuclear sites that has not yet been secured. It is sitting there, in a war zone, with a rapidly deteriorating Iranian government that nobody can fully track anymore. Now, I am not saying that to create panic. I am saying it because the American public deserves to understand the full scope of what is unfolding, and the question of who secures that nuclear material and how fast may be the most important question of this entire conflict. Emphasize. This is the part of the story that most news channels are glossing over, and it is the part that will define what this war's legacy actually is. What this means for your gas prices right now. Let us bring this home for a moment, because I know what some of you are thinking. This is all very significant. But what does it mean for me, for my family, for my wallet? Fair question. And it was asked directly to the president. What about rising gas prices? Trump's answer was confident. He said, they'll come down very fast. And then he connected the military operation directly to the economic outcome for American families by saying, we will have gotten rid of a major cancer on the face of the earth. Now let us decode that statement too, because it matters. Iran sits on the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most critical oil shipping choke points on the planet. Roughly 20% of the world's oil supply passes through that strait every single day. When there is military conflict in that region, oil markets panic, prices go up, and you feel it at the pump. The president's argument is this. Yes, prices may spike in the short term, but if Iran's military capability is truly destroyed and the regime falls, the long-term stability of that region could actually bring energy prices down significantly. A stable Middle East with no Iranian threats to oil shipping could mean cheaper gas for American families for years to come. Whether you believe that calculation is the right one, or whether the short-term pain is worth the long-term gain, that is a decision that ultimately belongs to the American people and their elected representatives in Congress. And that is exactly why what happens in the Senate over the next 30 days may be even more important than what is happening on the battlefield right now. The 6 U.S. troops killed in Kuwait. The story behind the story. Now, I need to take a moment, and I mean a real moment, to talk about something that is getting buried under all the geopolitical analysis and political debate. 6 American service members were killed in Kuwait. President Trump and the First Lady attended the dignified transfer, the solemn ceremony in which the remains of fallen American service members are received on American soil. 6 families, 6 chairs at dinner tables that are now empty. 6 people who woke up not long ago and put on an American uniform and went where their country sent them. I want to be very clear about something. This channel decodes politics, but politics is not abstract. Politics is not a game played in distant marble buildings by distant powerful people. Politics is the decision that sent 6 Americans to Kuwait. Politics is the authorization that put them in harm's way. Politics is the budget that funds the military they served in. Politics is the vote, or the lack of a vote, that determine the rules of engagement they operated under. Every decision made in the Senate, every vote cast or not cast, has consequences that end up in a dignified transfer ceremony. And that is why understanding what your government is doing is not just interesting, it is your responsibility as an American citizen. Emphasize. The names of those 6 Americans deserve to be remembered, and their sacrifice deserves an informed citizenry that holds its government accountable for every decision that puts American lives on the line. The War Powers Act. Does Congress have a say in any of this? Now let us get into the real constitutional meat of this situation, because this is the question that every civics teacher in America should be asking their students right now, and almost no one in mainstream media is explaining clearly. Did Congress authorize this war with Iran? The answer, yeah, as far as public information confirms, is no. There was no formal declaration of war voted on by Congress. There was no specific authorization for use of military force, what lawmakers call an AUMF, passed by the Senate or the House for this specific conflict. Now the White House will argue, and has argued in similar past situations, that the president has constitutional authority as commander-in-chief to conduct military operations to defend the national interest. And the War Powers Resolution of 1973 does give the president 60 days to conduct military operations before requiring congressional approval. But here is where it gets complicated. When a conflict expands to the scale described here, when a sitting president is talking about unconditional surrender, about wiping out an entire nation's military, about potentially sending ground troops to secure nuclear material, the legal and constitutional questions become very serious very quickly. The Senate has the power and the constitutional responsibility to weigh in on this. And over the next 60 days, you are going to see a significant legislative battle play out between those senators who fully support the president's actions and those who believe Congress needs to assert its constitutional role in this conflict. Emphasize. This is not a partisan issue. This is a constitutional one. And it is exactly the kind of Senate battle that this channel was built to decode for you. What happens next? The 3 scenarios America needs to prepare for. All right. We have decoded what happened. We have decoded what was said. We have decoded the congressional dynamics and the constitutional questions. Now let us look forward, because that is what really matters. Based on everything that has been publicly stated, there are 3 realistic scenarios for where this goes from here. And each one has very different implications for America. Iran surrenders or collapses. This is the scenario the president is clearly working toward. Iranian leadership, decimated to the 3rd and 4th tier, has no real military capability left. Internal pressure from the Iranian people, who have been living under this regime for 47 years, reaches a breaking point. The regime collapses from within. This is the best case outcome. It ends the conflict, potentially stabilizes the region, and could lead to significant long-term energy price reduction. Iran disperses and goes asymmetric. This is the scenario that military analysts are most concerned about. Without a formal surrender and without a stable government to negotiate with, what is left of Iran's military and its proxy networks, Hezbollah, the Houthis, other Iranian-backed groups across the Middle East, could go underground. They could shift to terrorism, cyber attacks, targeted assassinations, sleeper cell activations in Western countries, including the United States. This scenario is more difficult, more prolonged, and more dangerous for American interests globally. Regional escalation. Iran's allies in the region, Russia and China, have both had complicated relationships with Tehran, may see this moment as an opportunity or an obligation to respond. If the conflict expands to involve other major regional or global powers, the equation changes dramatically. This is the scenario that senators warning about forever wars are most focused on preventing. The path between these 3 scenarios will be determined in large part by what decisions are made in the United States Senate over the next 30 to 60 days, which is why you need to know exactly what is happening there. Here is what I want to leave you with today. In 7 days, the entire military capability of a nation that has spent 47 years threatening the United States, funding terrorism across the globe, chanting death to America, and racing toward nuclear weapons, has been largely destroyed. Whether you believe that was the right call or the wrong call, whether you are cheering or deeply concerned, what you cannot afford to be is uninformed. Because this is not over. The enriched uranium is unsecured. The congressional debate is just beginning. The proxy networks are still active. Gas prices are still moving. And 6 American families are still grieving. The decisions being made right now, in the White House, in the Senate, in military command rooms, will shape the world your children grow up in. And those decisions are being made by people that you elected, or did not elect, or forgot to vote for. That is why Senate Decoded exists. Not to tell you what to think, not to push you left or right, but to make sure you actually understand what is happening, clearly, completely, and without the spin. If you are not subscribed yet, do it right now. Hit the bell. Share this video with one person in your life who needs to understand what is actually going on in this world, and drop a comment below. I want to know what you think. What is the question about this Iran situation that nobody is answering for you? Tell me in the comments and I will address it in the next video. This story is not finished, not even close, and we will be here, every step of the way, decoding it for you. I am Senate Decoded, and I will see you in the next one.